Take a look at the top 6 as we speak, and that is the significant cutoff point. The 4 playoff teams, history tells us, will be on this screen right now. Since 2014, no team has jumped from lower than 6 in these penultimate rankings to get into the final 4 teams in the college football playoff. And so let's bring our crew back in here again. Paul Finebaum, Desmond with us today. And Heather Dinich, I start with you. What was the most important thing that fans should take away from what the committee told us last night?
Well, Greeny, I think it was that Florida is not entirely out of the conversation. It was the biggest shock and the biggest storyline of the night, I think. Florida only dropping 1 spot after a bad loss to LSU. CFP committee chair Gary Barta said that the selection committee noticed that Kyle Pitts, their tight end, was not in the lineup. They couldn't drop them below Georgia, he said, because of the head-to-head result. At the end of the day, the eye test put them ahead of undefeated Cincinnati, which is now sitting behind 3 two-loss teams. So while the door essentially closed on the Bearcats, they kept it slightly open for the Gators. But I know I would not pick Florida to beat Alabama, and I don't think anybody else would on this panel either.
That's fine. But again, I hear you, and that's true. But you never know what's going to happen in these games. That's why they play them. And so, Paul, let me come to you. If you were to drop Florida below or penalize them significantly for that loss, one could argue that you would then be also giving credit, if you will, or whatever, giving benefit to the ACC teams, which chose not to play this past weekend. Remember, the ACC canceled their games for Clemson and Notre Dame to make sure exactly that didn't happen to them. So on some level, I kind of get it from that standpoint. You say, look, they played the game. This is the chance that they took. We don't want to penalize them for playing the game rather than calling it off.
Greeny, I think we just have to accept the fact that the College Football Playoff Committee opted out for the week. There's no other explanation of what they came up with yesterday. I think they looked at all the intangibles and decided, you know what, we don't think Florida is a bad football team. They probably should have won the game. They had a stupid penalty at the end. They lost on a 57-yard field goal. So they just disregarded it in spite of the fact that LSU has been a very bad football team this year. And they're the defending national champion, but they're struggling to get to 500. So there's no explanation for that. I think what they really hung up on is putting Florida ahead of Georgia, which makes no difference whatsoever, even though they have a head-to-head, and keeping them behind Texas A&M. But Texas A&M was the slight winner of a very bad Tuesday reveal.
How about you, Desmond? What did you take away, the number one thing you took away from the rankings last night?
I love the way Paul just phrased it, that they checked out. I mean, I think that's the best explanation because everyone wanted to see how far Florida would drop. I don't care about the ACC didn't play. Listen, you played. You didn't complain about it before you were playing. You didn't say, hey, why do we have to play LSU? You know why? Because you thought you would go out there and you would stomp LSU. Like Paul just said, they're having a horrendous season. They're struggling to try to get to 500. So no one thought that the Florida Gators would go out there and lay an egg against the LSU Tigers. You put yourself in that position by not having the discipline during that game to finish it. So it's not about, well, this conference only played 6 games and this conference didn't play last week. That has absolutely nothing to do with nothing when you can control your own destiny. So I don't even like hearing those arguments, Greeny. Florida had an opportunity to go out there and handle their business. They didn't handle it. Everyone wanted to see, okay, how far would they drop now? And they only dropped them down 1 spot, which is insane to me. So I think Paul said it best. They simply checked out this week.
All right, Heather, let me come back to you on the next one, because we've talked already on this program and at length about how Texas A&M gets in. That's easy to see. It's not as easy to see how Iowa State gets in, but we just mentioned 6 has been the cutoff traditionally. Give me the path for Iowa State to hear their name called on Sunday.
Well, you have to knock Clemson. Oh, I'm sorry. Was that for Paul?
No, Heather. Sorry. Go ahead, Heather.
Okay. Clemson has to get knocked out of the picture, obviously. Texas A&M somehow has to lose to Tennessee. But it's not impossible for Iowa State, guys, because if they beat Oklahoma convincingly and add a Big 12 title to their resume, they can certainly jump back into the conversation. But again, you have to get rid of Texas A&M. You have to get rid of Clemson. You have to make sure Florida isn't in the picture. And obviously, it would help if Ohio State lost to Northwestern as well.
So, Paul, let me come to you. Give me a little preview. If Iowa State gets in ahead of Texas A&M, if everything breaks the way she's talking about, and it is Iowa State not, give me a preview of what you will say.
We're going to have the Alamo all over again, Greeny. I mean, that's outrageous. Texas A&M is going to be saying, okay, we went to Alabama, the best team in the country, and lost by 28, but we beat Florida, who's still in contention, and Iowa State, who lost to Louisiana. That's not LSU. That's Louisiana. Early in the season, gets in over us. The system will get blown up if that happens.
You agree with that, Desmond? Does Iowa State have an argument to make?
Yeah, but I think that Paul hit it on the head when he talked about Louisiana. And Louisiana's a good team. Actually, they're a great team. They're about to play in the championship game against Coastal Carolina. If they win that, I think that helps Iowa State's argument that they lost a team who's not in the Power Five, but still a pretty good team. So, but yeah, I agree. It's going to be chaotic if that happens. And Iowa State probably be left out in the cold still because of Louisiana loss.